A very good friend of mine I've known for more than a decade reached out after radio silence for 6 months. She contacted me because she couldn't get into her laptop. I helped her set it up. She had forgotten the password, and the facial recognition feature wasn't working. I mounted up and headed over, and I honestly didn't recognize her until she spoke. She had lost a significant amount of weight, and not in a good way. I gave her a hug and was honestly startled when she squealed in pain. Long story short, her facial recognition wasn't working correctly because she had lost enough weight that her facial structure wasn't recognized any longer. I got it sorted and we talked a little bit. She admitted her relationship wasn't going very well. I suggested that if maybe she might want to take a step back and have a think, she was welcome to stay at my place. She said she'd think about it and would call me. Well, the next day she called me in tears and asked if she could still stay in my guest room. I said of course, and we did just that. She didn't grab all of her belongings, just a few changes of clothes and the essentials. We got to my house, and I discovered my friend had a new best friend, my dog. He stuck to her like Velcro. He refused to go for walks unless she came with him, would snuggle any chance he got, and even hurled his frisbee at her and did a play bow and growl combo that is impossible to resist. Shortly thereafter, it was decided that frisbee is an outdoor sport. I pretended I wasn't jealous. Sunday morning at about 2 a.m., my car alarm started going off, which it had never done before while sitting in my driveway. I threw on a coat and went to investigate, and there was a random pickup with the door open and engine running in the driveway. Getting closer to my car, which had all 4 tires slashed, I saw a man flat on his back unconscious. There was also a rubber mallet lying not far from his hand and a smudge on my window. What followed probably made the emergency operator's night. 911, please state the nature of your emergency. Hi, I'm X and I'm located at 1234. Could you please have the police and an ambulance respond to my location as soon as possible? We can do that. Could you provide a little more information? Well, it looks like some jerk slashed my tires and tried to break my car's window, but the mallet he was using bounced off the window, and he appears to have knocked himself out with it. I'm sorry, what? When the police arrived, he had started to come around a little. The ambulance personnel checked him out and said he was safe to transport in a police car. They searched him and found a knife and identification, then he was placed in the back of a squad car. While they were talking to me about what had happened, they joked about how difficult this case would be to solve. Things rapidly got less amusing, though, when they checked the man's truck. He had a chopstick wrapped up in butcher paper on his passenger seat with a bunch of ground glass in it. That individual was fortunate he was in a police car when that little tidbit got disclosed. The police said they'd get back to me about the report they were working on and said they'd called tow trucks for the man's pickup and my poor car. I went back inside shaking from being outside in pajamas in New England in February and more than a little bit of fear and anger. My friend was waiting inside and wanted to know why her boyfriend's truck was in my driveway and what that was all about. I didn't think I could keep my temper at that moment, so I just scooped up my pup and snuggled him until he stopped struggling and just did a kind of whimper. Then I told my friend that her boyfriend had damaged my car and had a nice yummy steak with glass in it for the dog. She said, "I'm sorry, what?" In the following discussion, several things came to light. My friend gave her boyfriend my address because she thought he was worried for her safety and wanted to know where she was. Her boyfriend found out I had a dog because she had posted some pictures of him on social media, joking about being in love with him. My friend was now furious. Funny thing about domestic abuse cases, a lot of the time mental fatigue and trauma can do awful things to people's minds. Normally, it requires a lot of patience, time, and therapy to recover. Sometimes, though, the abuser will do something so cartoonishly evil that everything snaps back into focus, and the person who was being abused winds up in a headspace that probably inspired the Greek Furies back in the day. By the time the flatbed tow truck hitched up my car to get the tires replaced, we had a plan. Neither of us thought he'd go away long enough for me to really feel safe in my own home based on what he was discovered doing. Being an awful human isn't a crime, and vandalism and maybe animal cruelty would have him out on bail almost immediately. Someone foolish enough to use a rubber mallet on a car window would probably try again, convinced this time he wouldn't be caught. Domestic violence, however, can be a good deal more serious. Sadly, there was a lot of that. Once the sun came up, I borrowed a car, and we went to the emergency room. We got out and made our way to the doors and then immediately headed back to the car because there was an armed guard at the door, and my friend started to panic at the notion of interacting with the guard. I asked her to wait in the vehicle and went up to the guard to explain the situation. He understood immediately and got on his walkie-talkie to summon the supportive staff. They helped document everything and get the police involved. Small update. It turns out moving someone out in the midst of a bad breakup is pretty straightforward when half the couple is in custody. Half an apartment's worth of stuff is currently strewn about my part of the house, higgledy-piggledy, because I can't be bothered to move anything else, and she's not allowed to. She turned her key into the landlord after the landlord verified she hadn't done anything questionable, like leaving an unpleasant surprise in the toilet or putting holes in the walls. The landlord wouldn't give her half of the deposit, which I really can't blame him for. The funniest part? Her dad and I had no trouble with the furniture. It was the boxes and bags of clothing that nearly killed me. My dog was not pleased when he discovered the trash bag of dirty laundry wasn't his new bed. My friend was not pleased to discover my dog has a klepto streak when it comes to dirty socks. Can someone please explain to me why girls feel the need to have approximately 50 pairs of shoes? No word on charges or bail yet. I am keeping a close eye. Physical therapy time was not a happy time. It turns out getting muscle tone back after what she'd been through hurts a lot, and she's not one to suffer in silence. Eventually, though, she went from downright surly to just irritable, and things leveled out. One day she decided it was time to polish up the old resume and apply for jobs. Then she went for an interview and had a panic attack. A couple of therapy sessions later, the conclusion was that she should try for work from a remote position. More interviews followed this conclusion and went a lot better. My friend has an outrageously lucrative job doing event coordination for some place in the city. Who knew that making sure important stuff made it to the right place at the right time was not easy and incredibly well-paying? Now she's on the road to being physically able, and she's got income. Guess who got to go apartment and condo hunting for about a week solid? This guy. Guess who was expected to have an intelligent opinion on each and every single one of those apartments and condos? Also this guy. And guess whose eventual intelligent opinions on all the places were completely disregarded when she finally picked a place? You guessed it. This guy. She found a condo that was rent to own, which in my mind was outrageously expensive but apparently is quite the steal in the market today. One sprained back later, and all of the stuff she had from the old apartment is in the new condo. Her father and I did all of the heavy lifting. She helped, sort of. I guess opening doors and giving active feedback counts as helping in some books. And then it happened. Glorious quiet. I could sit down in my own house and not get blasted by the sounds of men being jerks and women planning their eventual triumphal revenge. One whole night of just me and the pooch. Except the whole time, the pooch was morose. The next day, I took him for a nice long walk, and when I opened the door, the familiar sounds of lifetime were heard. And she's back, on my couch. The dog was overjoyed. She took a ride-sharing service back to my place because allegedly she forgot some things and she needed my help assembling furniture to fill in the missing spots in her new lady lair. So we went to her condo, and she sat on her backside supervising while I assembled the furniture. Did I mention she put Lifetime on to give me something to listen to? Time went on in that fashion, and she spent less and less time inventing reasons for her to come over or for me to visit. I managed 4 whole days of dedicated bachelor time, and I got a phone call. She's so frustrated she's crying. The condo she's in apparently has a condo board, which is a lot like a homeowners association except it's condos, which aren't homes. I don't know. I'm an information technology guy. I load the pooch up into the car because there's no intelligible English coming over the phone, and it's time to take out the big guns. We arrive at the location, and I take the dog out of the car in preparation to surprise her with him, and I hear a shrew, not like the rodent shrew, the other kind, late 50s, early 60s, looks like she's just sucked on a lemon. This is a pet-free complex, the shrew snaps. I know, we're just visiting. The pooch wants to say hi. I pull the leash up so he can't get to her. There's maybe 10 feet between the two of them. The shrew shrieks, "Get that thing away from me!" and flees back into her lair. I'm thinking to myself, what in the world? He may think he's a ferocious beast, but even people who are afraid of dogs don't mind mine. They may not go in for a cuddle, but they're also not going to flee in abject terror. Don't tell him I said that. I knock on the door and it opens, and there's a squeal from both parties, and I'm thoroughly ignored for a few minutes. She insists on taking the dog for a tour before we sit down and talk about what had her so upset. It turns out the shrew is the condo association board president, and she's not at all hesitant to fine anyone for anything. Flush a toilet at 10:30 p.m.? Noise violation. Okay. Friend puts your garbage cans out at 8 p.m. the night before trash pickup? Littering violation. Okay. Hammer a tack into a wall to hang a picture frame? Violation. Okay. Sing terribly in the shower? Violation. Okay. There were others in this vein, but you get the gist. I have no idea how this woman accrued this much power, but I was mostly focused on fighting down the gigantic "I told you so" that was on the verge of escaping my lips. I told her it was too good to be true. Happily enough, right when my self-control was about to put me in mortal peril, we both heard shouting outside her condo. And the shrew is yelling at a tow truck driver. The tow truck driver shouts back, saying he can't tow that Tesla with his rig. She didn't mention it was an all-wheel drive car. She tells him he certainly can. The car is parked illegally. Take it away. My friend is still a little fragile and can't handle confrontations well. Me? I love confrontation. Well, no. As a rule, I don't love confrontation. But when a shrew tries to get my beloved car towed, I'm game. The shrew was still shrieking at the tow truck as it left, and I said something along the lines of, "Why were you trying to get my car towed?" She replied that the parking spaces are for resident use only. I point out the spot was being used with authorization from the resident who has no car. She sniffs and asks how she was supposed to know that. Right. So you weren't upset that I ignored your errant stupidity and wanted revenge. That part, I didn't say, but I'm pretty sure the look on my face got some of it across because she got really angry at that point. I decided it was time to separate my dog and my friend and head home before the tow company came back with a flatbed. I'm the first person to say it's almost always better for a person to sort out their issues themselves. The shrew wanted problems. I knew if I went back, I'd almost guarantee myself a tow. And then having to fight about who reimbursed me for the ridiculous tow charges just sounded exhausting. Better to fight without money on the line. So I went onto a social media platform. I went on Rebecca's social media account. Started poking around on the condo board's social media page and their discussion groups and such. And then I noticed something weird. On one conversation thread, she had a different name and a different picture. Like, if her name on the platform was Thundering Unpleasant Person, there was a different picture and the name Thundering You. Upon further investigation, I discovered an entirely separate social media persona for the shrew. Only this one thinks people who aren't white are inferior. A lot. On an entirely public profile. Interesting. Some quality time with a snipping tool later, and I've got a frankly astonishing amount of racist vitriol in one nice collage, complete with the incriminating bits conclusively proving that the two social media accounts are the same wretched excuse for a human being. I give Rebecca a call, and by a happy coincidence, she's eating when she picks up. I told her to check her email. She attempts to gasp with a full mouth when she starts reading the stuff and starts to choke. I tell her my plan. She tells me my death sentence is postponed. So I write up a little email and send it to the shrew's public-facing email address. The contents? I found your racist social media account. I won't send the link to every single person living in the condo development if you resign from the board and stop bothering my friend. Live and let live. It was phrased differently than that and attempted to sound conciliatory. I'd much rather handle this amicably. After all, what's a little persuasion between friends? She never replied to my email, but I found out she wasn't interested in an olive branch when my friend called me a few hours later crying. The shrew had been beating on her door and screaming incoherently at her. The police got called. The shrew got sent scurrying back into her lair with a lecture and a stern warning. And the incriminating social media account was deleted or made private. Fun fact, the condo board had an email to all residents link on their residents-only social media page. Guess who got that nice little collage I made? Everyone. That's who. I set the email delivery for a couple of hours after I got in the ride-sharing service to spend the night on my friend's couch. At dark 30 that night, guess who came knocking once more? The shrew. Only knocking isn't the word. It doesn't convey how truly unhinged this woman became. There was wailing and lamentations and gnashing of teeth, and she actually picked up a decorative rock and broke a window so she could try and get inside. Only there wasn't a still rather fragile friend alone inside. There was me, with a baseball bat. She decided discretion was the better part of valor, and then called the police. On me. I can honestly say I do not recommend getting weapons drawn on you by twitchy police officers as a form of recreation. But after a little bit of back and forth, the police officers decided I clearly wasn't on a bunch of illicit substances menacing people with a baseball bat. And they were apologetic when they saw the footage from the night vision camera I'd stuck on the door to capture the shrew in all her shrewish glory. Guess who got a restraining order against the shrew? Rebecca. This couldn't have happened to a nicer lady.